Premier Media's Mining Weekly is speaking to Neil Pretorius, the CEO of DRDGold. Neil, never before has it been so important for South Africa to boost jobs and livelihoods. And the effort that DRDGold is putting in this regard is exemplary. How many people are benefiting from DRDGold's far-reaching, broad-based livelihoods initiative?
Thank you, Martin. Let me start off by saying that I couldn't agree more. I think the answer to South Africa's poverty issues lie in developing the informal economy, and that's 100% where our focus is. We're squarely focusing on that through our various BBL programs and the four components comprising My Future, My Business, the BBL program itself, which is the sustainable farming, urban farming, and then also My Livestock. And we believe that up to 8,000 individuals have been exposed to this program. Hundreds of families, if not thousands, have taken advantage of the program. And we're also seeing a very significant uptick now following COVID, and especially amongst younger people wanting to script their own lives, realizing that unless they do it themselves, it's not going to happen for them. So it's definitely in all of the communities where we've been active, and now also in the West Rand, particularly in the Merafong area, it's really taken off, and it's developed some very good traction.
So what is involved there? Do people grow their own food, or how does this work?
Well, it's literally sort of the first step out of poverty. Now, oftentimes, many of these programs that are very good programs and the very sophisticated programs are pitched almost as though it's almost like showing up for a job, whereas this one is really pitched at the literally, as I say, that first step out of poverty, and sometimes it starts off in a slightly modest way, but once it takes off, it does. So the BBL program itself is an urban farming program, and its focus is to be able to grow enough food for a family of 4 on a piece of land the size of a door, and to do it sustainably going forward. But it's scalable. So once you go from the next step from there, there's a slightly bigger tunnel or shade cloth shaped in the form of a tunnel, a hydroponic tunnel, and then eventually it can also become a business. So we've seen quite a number of groups that have developed into business scale, and where there's also almost like an informal arrangement. If this one would do spinach, and that one would do carrots, and this one would do that, and so forth. So they've definitely developed a network and a market in these different areas. The My Future program is slightly different, and that's also where we're seeing many of the younger people becoming involved, because My Future is literally, it's what it says. It's planning my future. It's where I want to go. And it goes beyond agriculture. It is, what are the economic sectors where I want to get involved in? What are the economic opportunities? And how do I get there? So it's teaching you how to use your side hustle, or to develop a side hustle in the community where you are. So identifying opportunities in your community and using that as a means of generating income in order to get you closer to your goals. It's plotting your life story. And many of those participants then go into the BBL, into the urban farming, or they go into My Business. And My Business is focused more on developing its micro business development. It's teaching you those skills, how to run a business. So it's profit and loss. It's how to budget, how to manage capital, how to do market analysis, how to manage your overheads, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that one amongst younger people, as I say, is actually quite popular. And then there's an additional one, My Livestock, which has 2 components. The one is sort of grazing, which is more rural. These are skills that you take back home for certain individuals, especially in the mining industry. But then also yard animals like chickens and so forth. How do you combine the two? So if you're growing vegetables, how can you integrate that with a chicken setup, with both eggs and also the meat aspect of it? Martin, it's something, we initially targeted, we said if we could have 250 families taking this up, we think it's a success. As I say, more than 8,000 people have done the course that we have in our database. Thousands have taken it up, and it's really accelerating. People have decided, they've realized that unless I do it myself, it's just not going to happen for me. So that informal economy of keeping, you've got all these social monies flowing into communities, but they bounces. It goes immediately out to either the sponsor shop, oftentimes not even somebody from that community, or it goes to retail, into the formal sector, pep stores, OK bazaars, choppies, etc., chappies, etc., etc. What we're trying to do is create traction or stickiness for that money to be spent more times within that community. So and through these ventures that are established by members of that community, it's integral to the development of that informal economy and ultimately sustainable communities.
That's really holy and wholesome. And, ESG, a lot of people are complaining that these E and the S, they get into silos and there's not an integration. I've heard criticism of it coming through, but you people seem to specialize in integrating that ESG thrust, the environmental, social, and governance. You don't keep them in silos, but you put them all together. How important is that?
It's essential. If you don't do that, your ESG is going to be an ESG parade. It's like marching through town, and then afterwards, when people start losing interest and they move on to the next big thing, it will just disappear. And I think what we've had to do when we sort of forced into that was we knew that sustainability and sustainable development was core to business success because of where we were doing business, in close contact with communities, where the environmental impacts would be felt by those communities, and unless they were dealt with properly, it was going to bring a premature end to our business. But we also, because of where we're from, and remember, not many years ago, our market cap was less than the transfer fee of a good soccer player in the European League. We had to develop sustainability on a shoestring. So we didn't have the funds to go and build these independent siloed initiatives. We simply had to do it on an integrated basis. Also because of the size of our footprint, and this is maybe more where the social development aspect came in. We were convinced, and we still are, that unless you improve the quality of life or assist in improving the quality of life of the people in your areas of influence, that you're going to have a disgruntled and an unhappy community within which you now need to operate a business. And remember, we're right in the middle of Johannesburg. But we couldn't build schools and infrastructure, hospitals, and so forth. The only thing that we could do really was bring knowledge. So our model is one of knowledge and a nudge. So here's the knowledge, here's a bit of incentive, maybe a little bit of seed capital, but ultimately success depends on yourself. And I think that was part of the success. And on the environmental side, we knew that because of the size and the scale, if we didn't include this into our business plan, if it didn't become integrated as part of business, that it was just going to become unaffordable. We won't be able to just run these things independently. So on the water side, for example, our grey water is more abundant, so better security of supply, but it's also cheaper. And the same is now also going to apply in terms of the solar power that we intend generating going forward. It's going to be cheaper, our carbon footprint is going to be smaller, and there's going to be better security of supply. So our ESG does not come at the cost of quality. It's not something that gets funded. We're not diluting shareholder return out of our in order to fund our ESG initiative. And even in as much as it looks like just a cost, for example, the vegetation of tailings. Now, vegetation of tailings is such an important part, it's such an integral part of our operating budget that it's unthinkable. Just imagine that you wouldn't provide at least 80 to 100 million rand a year for the vegetation of tailings, because we've been doing it for a decade. Up until 5 or 6 years ago, we spent more money on that than we did on that we had distributed in dividends, because we knew that if people had to wash their curtains 2-3 times a week because of the dust blowing off our tailings dams, then at some point or another we're going to get stopped. So from a longer-term sustainability perspective, it was essential that we became a good neighbor. We could sit there and feel sorry for ourselves and say, but when these tailings dams were here, when they were established, there weren't any people. The people came to the city. The mine didn't go to the people came to the mine didn't go to the city. But that's a poor excuse for people who have no other option. And you will get interfered with, you will get stopped. So we adjusted our standards, we spent the money, and as a consequence, we now have longer-term sustainability. I think we're a more welcome neighbor than what we were a decade ago. So, short answer to your question is that our ESG does not come at the cost of quality. We're not diluting the realistic or legitimate expectation of our shareholders in funding this. It's become truly integrated into our business model.
And your reference to solar power there also fits into the ESG. And do you think that the president's latest energy statement sort of opens the way for maybe DRDGold thinking even bigger when it comes to energy generation by itself and solar power and renewable energy?
Yeah, I saw a presentation many years ago by France Grenier, which showed the correlation between economic growth, the availability of power. There's no doubt, it's probably one of the bravest, and I think one of the most valuable statements ever made by our president in opening this up. And I think we also need to appreciate what it took to actually make that statement, because remember, at the core, our ruling party is socialist. They believe in centralized control. And if you relinquish power over power, then you relinquish power over the economy, then centralized control is getting further and further away from your grasp. So I think it was a very brave thing to do for the government, considering where they are ideologically. But it was essential. And I think it was probably one of the most profound and one of the most important changes in policy that our government's made towards economic growth and so forth, not just for our company, but for the entire economy. It will unlock this economy. And you can see, Martin, in the recent past, even real bitter backer, people who really complained about everything and criticized government about everything and the prophets of doom, the little flashes of, hey, but maybe there's hope, flashes of hope also coming through the gloom. So I think we cannot underestimate or underemphasize the importance of that statement that was made.
And getting back to your excellent results today and the presentation today, what in your view should be the biggest takeaway from today's presentation?
Martin, I think the fact that we've been systematically investing in risk, in that which makes managing a business and operating a business in this environment challenging. Things that we started doing. I mean, the results that you saw here weren't decisions that we took 18 months ago. The results that I think we saw here were as a consequence of decisions and what we did pursuant to those decisions over the last 12, 13, 14 years of deciding to invest in very specific things that were risk-focused, like the backup power, like the clean and dirty water separation, just managing densities, by making sure that we can always keep our business in motion. I think a lot has also gone into our staff. Our staff know that our attitude is that you've been working here for 20 years, and if we all pull together, you can work here until retirement. We're genuinely interested in your future going forward. And we saw that we were rewarded for that attitude during COVID, when asking for volunteers, we were sort of oversubscribed. So I think there are a whole host of things. Call it the strategic decisions that were taken, call it the values that they developed, or as I suppose we'd allowed those values to sort of be applied in the workplace. I don't think we taught anybody anything. We just allowed them to be themselves. But I think all of that has contributed towards a business that is I think, stable, towards a team that is confident without being arrogant. I think there's a good combination of humility and confidence, and having sort of just invested in the things that you need to invest in order to make it work in this environment. So you look at the mechanization, the access to water, the backup power, because we had invested all of this money into environmental containment, for example. If there's a bit of a cash squeeze, we could defer some of those expenses for a period of time, and nobody would be the wiser because the impact wouldn't be felt. But that's not because of what we did last year. That's because there's been a program running for the last decade. The fruits of, I think, good governance over a period of 10 years. And for that, there's some very clever people working in this company that have taken those decisions, that have executed them, and now we're benefiting from it.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Neil Pretorius, the CEO of DRDGold.